Okay, it's all yours, judges.
All right, good morning. My name is Kevin Fox, and I am a AP teacher down in Southern California. And I refer to myself as a recovering We the People teacher. I had the great honor to coach a team for 15 years. So I know how your teacher's feeling right now. And so good luck to you all.
And good morning, Nevada. My name's Steve Lindley, and I live in Cheyenne, Wyoming. I'm a retired criminal justice administrator, and I've been involved with We the People for a number of years. Congratulations on reaching this point, and we're looking forward to hearing from you.
And hello, Nevada. My name is Tim Murphy. I work at the University of Chicago, where I oversee the Master of Liberal Arts program and run some continuing education programs for high school social studies teachers. So I am also very excited to be here.
All right, students, would you please introduce yourself and your teacher?
Hello, we are Reno High's Unit 1. My name is Giovanni Galliotto, and I'll be attending the Air Force Academy.
My name is Oliver Guinan. I'll be attending Yale University.
Besky. I'll be attending University of San Francisco.
And my name is Varun Giritharan. I will be attending the University of British Columbia. Our unit coach is Mr. Brian Carlin, and our teacher is Mr. Richard Clark.
All right, excellent. The question we have for you this morning: the American War is over, but this is far from being the case with the American Revolution. To what extent, if any, did revolutionary principles influence constitution making during the founding period? What problems, if any, does the principle of consent present when creating or amending constitutions? To what extent, if any, are revolutionary principles evident in modern times? You begin when ready.
Oh, let America be America again, the land that never has been yet, and yet must be, the land where every man is free. For poet Langston Hughes, America was a dream the dreamers dreamed. But there was never equality for me, Hughes wrote, nor freedom in this homeland of the free.
Nevertheless, Hughes and the founding generation swore the same oath, that despite broken promises, America will be. Two revolutionary principles animated their constitution making: popular sovereignty and political equality.
First, popular sovereignty is revolutionary because it opposes monarchy. James Madison extols popular sovereignty in Federalist 49, writing that the polity is the only legitimate fountain of power in a republic. And in his thoughts on government, John Adams writes that a Republican legislator should be in miniature an exact portrait of the people at large.
Madison's and Adams' thinking informed early state constitutions. For example, Section 2 of the 1776 Virginia Constitution contends that all power is vested in and derived from the people. Article 4, Section 4 of the United States Constitution codifies popular sovereignty by guaranteeing every state a Republican form of government.
The second principle is political equality. Political equality is revolutionary because it opposes nobility. The Continental Congress's Declaration of Independence asserts that all men are created equal. And early state constitutions reflect a transition toward this principle. The 1776 Pennsylvania Constitution holds that all men are born equally free and independent. Further, in the US Constitution, there are no property requirements for office holding, and Article 6 prohibits religious tests. Hughes recognized that political equality was central to American constitution making. Equality is in the air we breathe, he wrote.
The American Revolution teaches us that government derives its power from our consent and that it should consider everyone's consent equally. However, in 1789, political equality was far from the political reality. In the Fugitive Slave and Three-Fifths Clauses, the Constitution sanctioned a violent slave society, and women would not receive the right to vote for 146 years. Herein lie three problems the principle of consent creates when drafting or amending constitutions.
Problem 1, under what conditions can we legitimately consent? Surely not when shackles bind our hands and feet, or when we are forced to forfeit our property upon marriage.
Problem 2, how do we consent to a document written 250 years ago? According to John Locke, through obeying society's laws, we express tacit consent. However, tacit consent begins and ends with our happiness. We cannot consent to a society we cannot enjoy.
So problem 3, what do we do when we do not consent? In 1775, the Massachusetts Provincial Congress declared that citizens who refuse to assert their natural rights commit high treason against God. For the Congress, citizens had a right to revolution to protect their life, liberty, or property.
However, like all rights, our right to revolution is not absolute. Indeed, Jefferson observes that prudence ensures that government will not be changed for light and transient causes. Only after a pattern of malicious abuse do we have a right to form a new one.
Today, revolutionary principles guide us towards the promise of something better. The revolutionary principle of popular sovereignty inspired the 17th Amendment, which gave voters the power to elect their senators. Today, popular sovereignty animates attempts to ratify the Equal Rights Amendment and pass election reform.
But there are many challenges. Mass incarceration and police brutality undermine political equality and popular sovereignty. For Trayvon Martin, George Floyd, and so many others, opportunity was not real, nor life free, even though they lived in the land of liberty. To realize political equality, citizens must not only be subject to the law, but also protected by it.
Langston Hughes demonstrates that revolutionary principles guide us. Because we the people, he says, through sweat and blood, faith and pain, must bring back our mighty dream again. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. We'll go ask some follow-up questions. So you talked about political equality and you touched some on what that looks like today. So my initial question is, do you think the state constitutions then hit that mark better than the United States Constitution? You referenced that some. Can you expand upon that a little bit?
Yes, I do think that state constitutions more effectively represent ideas of political equality and popular sovereignty. An example of this is one of the earliest state constitutions of Massachusetts, drafted by John Adams, which has two articles, one of which Article 22, that says that the legislature should meet frequently to meet for the grievances that the people have, which is something that emphasizes political equality.
Building off my colleague, in the Nevada State Constitution today, Article 11 outlines the need for public school education, furthering political equality and enabling citizens, especially younger citizens, to receive an education that will put them on a more equal footing in society.
I disagree with my colleagues. I don't think that state constitutions, especially early state constitutions, hit the mark on political equality. I'm thinking specifically of the 1777 Georgia Constitution, which establishes a state religion and obviously provides for slavery, two things antithetical to political equality.
Okay, thank you.
We talked a lot about revolutionary principles, and the other half of the question is the consent to the governed, which I think you were getting at with popular sovereignty. Honoring the consent of the people, in my opinion, has an inherent flaw in it. The people have to know what's best for them. So what happens? How do we do that when they're misinformed or misled?
Looking at Thomas Hobbes' principle of Leviathan, having our authority and those in power who know the decisions that are correct for society is important. So having people who will understand laws and understand, although popular sovereignty is important, the people are not always right. So a good example of this in our present government is looking at the judicial branch, which has judges who have life tenure. And this prevents them from being influenced by the opinions of the populace.
The answer to your question, Mr. Murphy, is simply that they can't. This is something that Benjamin writes about in his speech from which this question is derived. Rush argues that it's necessary to create the conditions for democracy. He suggests a federal university. He suggests a postal service. He suggests things that can ensure that citizens have Republican values. He tells us that if we establish the conditions for democracy, democracy will follow through constitutionalism.
Although I agree with my colleagues, I also think the most effective way we can consent today is through voting. And I think the issue you're talking about happens through a lack of election information and voter information. And luckily, President Joe Biden recently introduced his Executive Order 14019, which is supposed to advance both voter registration and election information to communities that don't have it as much. And so hopefully that will remedy that issue.
Okay, let's continue on that train of thought. You referenced in your prepared remarks the Republican Guarantee Clause in the Constitution. Do you, evaluate the current proposals that we're seeing around the country in some state legislatures that are arguably challenging that Republican guarantee for all people within their states?
Yeah, absolutely. Looking at the Georgia voting bill, SB 202, it's clear to see that it prejudices minority communities through forcing voter ID laws and lessening the places absentee ballots can be placed. So because of voting laws that restrict voting for certain communities more than others, it's clear that this guarantee of republicanism that the states are supposed to be entitled to, they're not using to the fullest extent because they're restricting voting.
What is more, there are more than 100 GOP bills in state legislatures right now that make it legal, among other things, to hit protesters with your car if they're protesting on a public street. Central to the idea of legitimate consent is to be able to legitimately dissent as well. Bills like these make that impossible and undermine our First Amendment free speech rights.
In addition, looking at cases such as Bronkovic versus DNC, the VRA and voting have become key issues as many groups are being constantly excluded through different issues, as shown by that case, which is surprisingly recent.
So what's the remedy? What's the solution to this arguable voter suppression movement we see across the country?
John Rawls writes in his theory of justice that in order to create legitimate consent, you have to take away who you are and look at everyone's rights and guarantees to society and see that they're all equal. And if everyone's rights and opportunities are not equal, they can't legitimately consent. So it's necessary that presidents and the federal government and state governments do not exclude certain areas of the population so that everyone's consent can be legitimately included.
Yeah, but some of those states are doing exactly that. What's gonna stop that from happening? Or what might?
It's clear that the states are obviously imposing most of the restrictions on political equality. So through the federal government taking more control of police reform and the necessary voting requirements that the states are allowed to impose, through the federal government setting standards that the states have to abide by and taking back some of that state power, then the states will be more restricted in their ability to infringe upon rights because the states are the ones who are usually the ones infringing upon the people's rights.
And it's important to remember that the federal government is who has the final say. We have the Bill of Rights, we have the Equal Protection Clause in the 14th Amendment, 17th Amendment, 24th Amendment, 26th Amendment. A majority of amendments to the United States Constitution have expanded our idea of popular sovereignty and voting rights. Should they choose, the federal government can intervene to prevent disenfranchisement in the states you mentioned.
In addition, looking at—
I agree with my colleagues.
Go ahead, Sophia.
I agree with my colleagues, and I think a recent place we can see this is New York just last Wednesday passed a bill that would give voting rights to felonies who just were released from parole, which this is a big issue with disenfranchisement, which opens those voting rights to more people and thus emphasizes popular sovereignty.
Are we closer now than there's just a few seconds left. Has it been a trajectory in the right direction like this, or how would you evaluate where we are today as far as reaching the principles that are desired?
We've gotten a lot closer towards that political equality and having a better idea of popular sovereignty through amendments such as the 13th Amendment, which abolished slavery, and then the 15th Amendment and the 19th Amendment, which all empower voting and allow for more voting rights. We've gotten closer and closer. May I continue?
Thank you very much.
Right. Okay, this is our time. We'll give you some feedback, and I'll go first. Very impressive opening statement. I wasn't expecting the Langston Hughes treatment, but I really enjoyed it, and it made a lot of sense. As soon as you got rolling, I thought, yeah, that really resonates. And I commend you for that. That was excellent. And then you tied it through. It wasn't just a flippant little quote. I mean, you actually embedded that into your entire process of thinking. So I appreciate that. Just going to my question near the end there. Yeah, we've got this. This is a classic challenge. States have the power to do things in their states. We know the Constitution puts forth the principle of 51, separate elections for our president, at least, every single 4 years. And so there's some tensions there. As you continue to study and learn, and as you think about the future, that challenge is cyclical, right? The 14th Amendment is the answer to all this, and the Supremacy Clause. But we've also seen in recent past, like the Shelby County decision, that began to erode and weaken the Voting Rights Act, right? And so now you have this tension where states are becoming emboldened to pull back and to some things that are questionable. They seem to have their expressed intent and purposes, but underneath that, there may be some more nefarious ideas. But I appreciate your depth of knowledge. I really appreciate the specificity of your use of evidence, your references to particular clauses of state constitutions and the US Constitution, your use of cases, and then explaining, right, giving us the reasons for why you're mentioning things and taking your position. So I commend you for your hard work, and congratulations to you all, and kudos to Mr. Clark.
Thank you.
And I will concur with my colleagues' comments. First of all, I like to begin by saying congratulations on reaching this point. That is an immense amount of work. Thank you to you folks, as well as your teacher and coaches and others that have helped you get here. As Kevin said, I was most impressed by your breadth of knowledge, your ability to complement one another, and occasionally, which is impressive as well, counter one of your colleagues' thoughts with some in-depth reasoning and a different angle on the argument. Your wide-ranging knowledge across the question, I thought, was impressive, and that's indicated by the careers you have in front of you and where you're going to school, et cetera. So nicely done, and we wish you well moving forward.
I'll just echo all of that. The breadth of knowledge, the playing off of each other, and especially in the question and answer session, like understanding what the questions we're asking, and then just jumping in right away with not a canned response, but a thought out response that is evident of good preparation. I would echo what Kevin said, and not just with the Shelby County case, but I think that there's a long history in the United States of the courts not stepping in like they're supposed to, or stepping in and going the wrong way. So that would be something to keep in mind. And I only feel comfortable mentioning that to you guys because you did so well. And what I was most impressed by was the confidence. And I suppose if I was going to the Air Force Academy, to Yale, to San Francisco, or to the University of British Columbia, I would share that confidence. So yes, congratulations to your coach and thank him, but don't forget that you guys put in the hours and the work, and continue to do that in your educational careers. And I'll be comfortable with you guys having your hands on the reins in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Thank you, and I'm going to stop the recording now.